the acoustics here. If I'm not getting across, please give me a signal. I'd like to welcome you here on behalf of the Friends of the Brook Farm and Schwangum citizens. My name is Larry Badendijk, and I missed the meeting, so I got drafted for this, and then I missed the other meeting. And don't miss meetings because they voted unanimously that if this didn't work, I would be blamed and throw things at me. So anyway, I'm Larry Badendijk. I've lived here for 20 years. I live just below Unison on Calvin Boulevard, and in the house at the end of the property is wetlands, and the Flanagan weeds through it. So I'm a neighbor of Brook Farm, and I'm a member or a subscriber to Brook Farm, the vegetables. And I'm also a member of Friends of Brook Farm and one of the conveners for the Schwangum citizens. So, I mean, we are pleased at the turnout. Lots of faces I don't recognize and probably haven't seen before. I'm not sure if that's dangerous for us or not, but anyway, we can handle it. And I'd like to welcome all of you, and particularly, I know there's going to be some opposition to some of us, and I'd like to give a special welcome to you. We need opposition. It keeps the adrenaline going, the brain going, and it's the essence of democracy. So our hope is that this is going to be a civilized discussion. We know that there's lots of anger out there, and some of it really justified. My hope is you feel angry, that's fine, but express it in terms of cold, calm, implacable logic, supported by some solid evidence, and we'll get along here. Because our goal is, first of all, to begin a real discussion, and there are big issues. The issues concern literally the quality of life in New Paltz, our relationship to what makes it so rich, the Schwangums and the Mountain House and the Preserve, what it means to be a citizen, who has standing to address these issues, and basically, even we're going to have to get into something like the nature of ownership. Who owns the Schwangum? Who owns the property? So we're going to get along in as civilized a manner as possible, and we hope to get through the necessary presentations and leave as much room as possible for discussion. That's my goal. Okay. Let me introduce my bodyguards. Okay. Paul Herman Zeller, Rebecca Armstrong, and Lori Gross. Okay, they're going to back me up here, and if you blame me, you might have to cope with that. They're really fierce, tough ladies, and the worst thing about them, I was in the meeting, but if I were the opposition, I was in the meeting, and there were literally 4 women around, and they were angry, but that wasn't what was so bad. What was scary is they were laughing. They were having a great time here, and the things that they were going to do and turn things over. And that's I was glad I was on their side. Anyway, I got my back up here. Let me say briefly, because probably a lot of you don't know what Friends of Brook Farm is and how it came about. Brook Farm, Friends of Brook Farm started, I guess, in April, as soon as received the notification that Brook Farm would be canceled, vaporized at the end of the year. There it goes, in December, gone with the lease and no more Brook Farm. And the members of the Brook Farm were largely, but not exclusively, people who had signed up to get their shares. And an amazing thing about the farm and the community that evolved out of that is that there were people there who had their own vegetables but still wanted to be a part of it, and were contributing right away. Whereas my friend Bill Munzer, he doesn't want to be called attention to, but he built the hoop plant for the things there, and he wasn't getting his vegetables there because there was something so compelling, and what Creek, the new farmer, offered was something that there's a deep longing for in America. I think the deepest longing throughout the country is a longing for community, a sense of belonging and working with others on some common task. And, the vegetables from the Walker Review are fine, so that's not why all of us joined. An extraordinary thing that we managed is that the year before that, membership was 30 families. within a few months, he had gotten it up to over 100. And the appeal was the sense that we belong, that we are going to participate in the production of food. And from the very beginning, people wanted to contribute. So when Creek informed us and passed on the message, by the way, that was his obligation because we were digging in, we were contributing, we had a right to know to make plans for next year. I think it's important to know something about Creek and the resistance. The resistance was spontaneous on the part of those of us who had come. We, in fact, had to push Creek sometimes. So he did, and he had his employer and stuff. And in fact, this is a genuine grassroots people's movement, Friends of the Brook Farm, and what we want to do is to save it. We had to organize, because there is a board, but our sense was that the board was not as enthusiastic about resisting as we want them to be. And the board is, a secret society, so we don't get a lot of direct information from them, but we felt that we had to do something to fight for it. So we began, I think, a very impressive educational program, and I think the fact that so many are here is testimony to that. We wrote letters, we did all the things you have to do on Facebook and social media, and just going out and talking to people, and that's worked. Well, we were making progress, but we seemed to be sort of stuck somewhere. It was hard to grapple really with the opposition, and some of us got together, and what we realized is that we looked at Brook Farm and what was being done to that this was sad in itself, something that we should be concerned with, but we also realized that this was a symptom of some larger dysfunction and something wrong with the total system. And we had to look at that larger one, and we had to reframe it. So the members of the Schwangum citizens, most of them came out of the Friends of Brook Farm, but this was we were looking for another angle because we needed both more support, and these issues had to be faced, and they're fundamental. They have to do with the nature of standing, who can speak. They have to do with taxation. They have to do with local governance. There are all kinds of impressive issues here that we have to face. And we worked out, our approach to it. And of course, the central issue, and one that concerns almost everyone here, is taxation. And there's an obvious connection here between that and nonprofits like the Preserve. Whenever the town or anyone okays a nonprofit movement from profit, normal tax-paying into a nonprofit entity, the rest of us pay. That means our tax bills are going to have to go up. And the cause might be worthy, and most of us here, by the way, are enthusiastic about the Preserve. We have never had any big complaint about OSI, and I don't think anyone here is going to in any way challenge the contributions that the Smiley brothers have made. So I think part of our rule here is we're not going to attack individuals. We're going to try to get together and look at the issues. And we think this should be educational. We're all learning. This whole world is new to me. And our hope is, toward the end, we will come up with some plan of action and some consensus. But let's get back here again to the whole point of taxation. If, in fact, every time some land, for whatever the nonprofit, is taken off the tax rolls, the rest of it pay. And that implies what? That whoever is getting this benefit has an obligation to the citizens and taxpayers to be sure that they are delivering both benefits to the taxpayers and the community, or perhaps some higher good, because I think the existence of the Preserve and the Mohawk Mountain House is a national treasure. That has wider implications and use, and that's okay. But we need, first of all, justification for that. And then we have a right to oversee that. We have a right to be sure that they deliver. And what we have to look at, and I'll have to take some time later to explain this, is we came to the conclusion about a question of who owns the mountains. who owns the preserve? And this is a strong conclusion, and I expect some resistance to it. And our conclusion is that we, the citizens of New Paltz, the citizens of all 5 towns, because the preserve is embedded in those 5 surrounding towns, and we own that.
Amen, brother.
Okay? And therefore, we should have a say in its operation. We should have a say in whether it, in fact, is delivering on its promise. Now, this is tricky, and I don't want to go too long because we're getting here into the whole philosophy of what ownership means. But what has happened is over and over again in discussions, and one of our reps actually talked to the head of OSI, and the guy said, well, look, I own it, or we own it, OSI owns it. And our rep pointed out that, yeah, maybe you did, but it's a nonprofit. And that's a little complicated. So let me get some simple things, a simple distinction. All these are common sense. I'm sorry I don't mean to oversimplify or do this, but we have to get these because it shows up in the discourse and the conversation that we are having about this. Property is a different type of personal possession from everything else we have. I have a wonderful Prius. Okay, if I decide that that Prius should be cut to pieces and turned into a piece of modernist sculpture, no one cares, okay? My TV is mine, okay? These are personal property. We do not own property in the same way. When you buy a piece of property, what you get is the right for certain uses of that property, okay? And if you pay off your mortgage, you pay off all your debts, you still don't have total possession. If you don't pay your taxes, they'll come and take it. So you get use, and that's what you are buying. It's not the same way. Follow this? Now, let's move now to the whole notion of what a nonprofit is. We all know nonprofit. It means any corporation that's set up to, in some ways, enhance the public good, to fulfill a need, to carry on an activity. But its goal is not to make money, not to make a return on investment. They might, okay? It would be possible that their return exceeds their expenses, but that's not the goal. Okay, now let's look at how this translates with this whole notion of land. Because in your normal advocacy group, whether political or for scientific research, the public is not funding. What is funding the Mohonk Preserve? You and me and every single taxpayer is funding that. This makes sense, doesn't it? Yes, we pay, okay? It goes off, that goes up there. And therefore, let's ask the question here, and I'm going to put this strongly. Who owns the preserve? Who owns the Schwangrunds? Who owns the mountains? We own it. We own it. Okay? Now, you know, what comes up here in all these discussions is who has standing. And that's, I understand that's a legal term. I'm not a lawyer. But I would say we even have legal standing. And you can see this if you look at the secret descriptions. Because under the environmental impact statement, the final judge is not a state agency. The final judge on the adequacy is us. And if we think that the environmental statement was inadequate or rushed through, as apparently it was recently in some of the transactions, we not only have a right to challenge it, we can go to courts. And, okay, the courts tend to be on the side of the citizens. We do have legal standing. There are things we can do about this. We have political standing. We can identify the members of the town board whose allegiance is divided or even perhaps on the side of the Preserve or the Smiley Brothers. We can vote them out. We have lots of things we can do, but we have to decide what we want to do. Now, let me get it straight again. When my wife and I spent a year and a half looking for a place, and we would drive past on Butterfield there, and I would say, there's got to be a house here for us. And after a year and a half, looked in the paper, like, that's it, and drove right out there to Calvin. We made an offer right away. We love this place, okay? And we love the spirit of New Paltz. We love the vivid democratic traditions behind it and the independence. And I have a view of that whole mountain. It's wonderful. And we do not want to deprive the Smiley Brothers of a reasonable profit. We don't want to dismantle the preserve. We can even imagine and think probably it has to be expanded, okay? And we have no particular grudge against OSI. But there's something wrong here. When 328 acres was sold, in only 20, and the house, okay, of Brook Farm was told that that was ending without any explanation. And up to this day, I talk to people who should be in the know, no one can say, why do they need the whole 328 acres, okay? What's wrong with leaving a thriving, rich, okay, mini or micro community in a town, in an area that values community? So that we think that every citizen in New Paltz has a stake in this. We hope you will come and stand with us, and okay, you follow, I hope you can follow the logic on this. What we want to do now is, some of you don't know anything about the Brook Farm, so our farmer, Preet Iverson, is going to give a presentation. We're going to hear something about it, and when we get through this, we are going to open it up for what we expect to be a civilized, rich conversation in which we explore the issues and somehow come, we hope, to agreement and possibly friendship. So again, I want to welcome our opponents and our pledges, and we hope all of you will observe the decorum today. Yes?
I just wonder if, I'm sure everybody here knows a lot possibly about it, but in journalism you call it the kernel paragraph. I just wondered if you could do a quick
Right, I thought I'd
sentences.
speak to that. A little background, maybe?
Yeah, just like one paragraph of OSI plans
Right,
to do
right.
this, that, just one paragraph or two paragraphs, so we're all
Right.
caught up to that.
Yeah, Brook Farm has been on the land for 10 years.
Would like to stand up?
Yes, sorry.
Maybe come forward.
Yeah, sure. Brook Farm has been on the land for 10 years. It was owned by the Smiley brothers. About 2 years ago, there was a parcel of about, correct me if I'm wrong, 700 some acres that was sold to the Open Space Institute. 800 plus acres, to the Open Space Institute.
Sold by Mohawk?
So sold by, yes.
No.
By the
Smiley Brothers.
By the Smiley brothers. No, when I say, not the preserve, I'll say the preserve if I mean the preserve. My understanding was that it was sold to the Open Space Institute and they were going to hold it until the preserve could afford to buy it. It's not clear now whether that's exactly what was going on. So the farm has now had a new landlord for 2 years, and this year the farm was told that its lease would not be renewed. That Open Space Institute was going to lease the entire, well, they want to subdivide the parcel, that's the first thing. And I believe that part of it would go to the preserve, and part of it they want to lease to Glenwood Institute, which is a nonprofit from across the river that, whose mission statement says that they support, among other things, that they support farming in the Hudson Valley. And they want to set up 3 and eventually 6 and then 9 incubator livestock farms on the land. People would pay to come and learn to farm for 3 years and then would go off and hopefully set up their own farms. That is what we know of part of the intention for that land. There is also a lot of what looks like prep work for using the gatehouse as an entry to that land and putting in a parking lot and making it a tourist destination. We don't know a lot about that because nothing has been publicly explained about that. It's all very...
Who is going to own the gatehouse? Is that still part of Mohawk?
Right now it's OSI.
OSI owns
I believe it's supposed to end up being part of the preserve, but one thing you have to understand is that OSI and the preserve and the Smiley brothers all have very sort of interlocking boards of directors, and in a sense, they're all facets of one corporate name, yes.
It's sold to the owner preserve.
Well, it will be.
No, it's not. It's legally owned by
I think you're in a really
Open
good place.
Space
That's the question the
Conservancy.
president
Has
of the board is here on that.
856 acres.
Ask him.
So that's who owns it now. If you ask the town of Newport.
I'm sorry, Andy, what did you say?
If you go to the town of Newport and ask them who owns that parcel of 856.3 acres, the owner is the Open Space Conservancy,
Yes.
not the Open Space
Well,
Institute.
which is the land acquisition arm of the Open Space
All right, so the
Institute.
preserve does not
But-
own it now.
I think this will be a little better organized. I hope that's enough of an introduction to what we're dealing with. I think what we need to do is have Creek talk about the farm and then maybe open up a discussion. Yeah.
I live next door to Brook Farm and was evicted.
Are you Cal?
I'm not Cal.
I've heard of Cal, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Cal lived up the mountain. I lived in the old house that was in the woods. It was very hard to see, but closer to 299. I had the head of the Open Space Institute, who's also the legal advisor, the head attorney for the Open Space Conservancy, and Glenn Hoagland, who's the head of Mohawk Preserve, sit at my dining room table and tell me how things were going to work. I mean,
Which is that you were gonna have to leave?
that was that was about a week before they almost tripled my rent in lieu of evicting me. And then I challenged them and I said, "I'll be glad to pay it," and then they evicted me. I played enough poker to know what they were doing, and they had enough money in their hand to not care. So anyway, but they have plans. I mean, they gave me an idea of the visitor center, which is the gatehouse, and part of it, I believe, actually Preserve has taken ownership of some of it. They just got a $500,000 economic development grant.
Our money.
Our tax
money.
money. So and I know they were planning, because I was involved with all the town planning board meetings before this all happened. I mean, I have recordings of them telling me, leaving me messages saying, "Don't worry, no changes, nothing's gonna happen to you," and then my family and I were kicked out. But they have
Well,
plans of
in
a
fact-
walkway going through there,
Yes.
through all the swamps.
And I'm picturing
People-
destination weddings, and stuff. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I do know that most of the land that OSI has acquired has not been put under conservation easements, which means that it still can be developed. If they were really interested in preserving wild lands, it would be
Same
under
with Mohawk
conservation
Preserve.
easement. What's that?
5,000 acres of Mohawk Preserve has no conservation.
Right, right.
They
So,
can't give it. they can't
so,
take it
and the tax issues are that as soon as this land was sold to a nonprofit, it came off the New Paltz tax rules, which, right, which means that they are still using services, but they're not taking that.